practice. I think the guys are progressing and moving in the right direction. Got another difficult task this week in the Ravens. That offense is high volume, very explosive. Lamar Jackson is playing at that MVP level as he did a couple of years ago. All the weapons around him are exceeding. Odell is still playing high, and I love just watching Flowers and the things that he can do. It's going to be a difficult task. And with that, I'll take your questions.
Steve, what makes Lamar Jackson different and perhaps more difficult to defend than the other mobile quarterbacks you've seen the last couple weeks?
I think just his ability to make guys miss in space. He's very elusive. And to be honest, I think he's playing so much better from a standpoint of the passing game as well, which I think creates other elements of his ability to be able to scramble when things aren't there. So he's really playing good football, not turning the ball over, which is a key for them. And again, we got to do a much better job than we did last week from a standpoint of tracking the ball carrier and, most importantly, tackling.
When you said, referring to your own team, the guys are progressing, what areas do you want to see them continue to get better?
Most definitely from what we did last week. I felt like we had too many missed tackles. Just what I just alluded to, I think it was more us and not executing our technique, not understanding where our help was coming from. You had a couple of times we had a situation where it could have been, really 4th and 9, and all of a sudden now we miss a tackle because we're not tracking the right way. It's 4th and 3, and they go for it. So just the little things like that we have to improve on, and that's the progression that I'm seeing this week.
I think we ask you about Charvarius every week, basically. But going back to when you got here, what was your assessment of what his skill set was, and in what ways has he maybe even exceeded that this year?
Well, I think it was high from what I saw, and that was the reason why John and Kyle, brought him over. I think he's now playing at that Pro Bowl, All-Pro, caliber level, and you saw that, and I've seen it all year. And you saw it definitely last week with his 2 picks. And the one thing that I pointed out this week, and I believe it was yesterday with the defense, I took that exact same clip that we had in practice, the exact same route, the exact same break. And what I always talk to those guys about is just how we practice. What you're doing in practice is going to be just a reflection of what you do in the game. And so he got that rep early. He made that play in practice, and it was just routine when it happened in the game.
He indicated that he had been working with Sam Darnold and catching balls from him. Was that something he came to on his own? It was suggested to him?
Yeah, most definitely. That's another area of his growth where, he gets, extra work in after practice. It was something that he went to Donald on his own to be able to get that assistance. So Sam did a great job last week in preparing him.
When you talk about that clip from practice, that was in preparation to face the Cardinals?
Yes.
Is that unique that something like that happens exactly like that?
It is, and a lot of times, in our teaching progression, we will always try to, show that for us plays back to back, and it was just very fortunate that we were able to get that exact clip.
Kyle was saying yesterday that their 2 linebackers, Smith and Queen, are pretty similar to what you've got in Warner and Greenlaw. I would ask you to speak to their linebackers, but when you have 2 like you do that can cover that much ground sideline to sideline and be that athletic, what does that do for your defense in terms of what you can call and that sort of thing? Well,
it makes our defense so much better when you have that kind of speed, and I think that's really where the game is now. You play so much out in space where offenses try to spread you out and get you in those different looks. That's why the old school traditional Mike linebacker is not the case anymore. We look for 3 wheels that can play Mike and Sam. So their ability allows not only, me, but everybody around them to play better.
Is this kind of an example of 4 modern linebackers there too, and you two? I mean, what the position has evolved to?
I think it's going to showcase a lot of speed and talent on that field on Monday night. And, a lot of respect for those guys. I know of them coming out of the draft and just watching them, and cross, tape. But I definitely love the guys that we have, and I think, our guys are going to go out and perform well.
Why is the Ravens' run game so efficient, and what's the key to slowing it down?
Just really all the gap scheme, then the zone read, Lamar with his ability to be able to pull it at any time, So this is going to be a very disciplined football game. A lot of times you see talent on both sides of the ball, but it's a team that's real disciplined in their assignments. When you take the dive, take the dive. When you have a quarterback, have the quarterback, vice versa. So we got to do a great job communicating on every snap, and as we did today and yesterday, be very detailed in our assignments.
How particularly tricky is that for the nickelback, whether he's watching the quarterback and also has a pretty good slot receiver to chase around?
It's definitely a difficult task, and I think Demo is up for it, and we can't put everything on him. That's why, based off the call, you always have different assignments, and putting him in a situation to where, if he's part of the run game, he got to execute that, and then there's times where he's not a part of it, and he has to play pass first. So, again, I think it just goes back to being disciplined and executing your assignment.
Are you encouraged by what you saw from Hargrave today?
Yes, definitely encouraged, but, it's still, wait and see kind of thing. So, but I'm definitely encouraged about what I saw today.
How's Jason Verrett coming along?
He's looking well each and every day. So we'll see whether or not he's going to have the opportunity to be up, and if so, how many reps he'll get.
Much is made of the way the wide receivers here, block. When you look at other teams, is it unique? Or do you see other teams that have the same commitment to all 11 taking part in the run?
Well, I think it's extremely unique in how our guys block. I was very impressed with that when I first got here. We get a lot of good work going against those guys in OTAs and training camp. And, I talked to Debo one time, and I asked him about that. And his answer to me was, if we don't block, we don't get the ball, So I think, there's a certain culture that Kyle has created that it's not just about catching the football. It's, you can see it throughout this team, very unselfish individuals. And you go back to IU, on that play against Seattle, I believe it was, where, he went down there and made that block inside the 5. So just very unselfish play. And those guys prepare us for every game and every week. Appreciate you. Merry Christmas to you.
Chris, what's the challenge for blocking along the offensive line when the linebackers near their team, they're two guys that Kyle was talking about yesterday, Smith and Queen, who are kind of like your guys, Warner and Greenlaw. How much tougher is it to block these guys than, say, it was blocking linebackers 10, 15 years ago?
It's always been hard. There's always been quality linebackers on every team I've ever been associated with. When we play somebody, there's always a good player on the other side. You go back to when we were in Tampa with Derek Brooks and Hardy Nickerson and guys like that. They're outstanding inside. When you come through the first level, you get through Sapp and you get through the guy, next thing you know, or Booger McFarland, next thing you know, you're trying to block Derek Brooks, right? Same thing, we had Jack Del Rio was playing middle linebacker, guy named Eddie McDaniel in Minnesota. There's always been a quality. These two guys are outstanding inside linebackers. When I was in Baltimore back in the day, Ray Lewis and Bart Scott were the two inside linebackers. There's always quality inside linebackers. Now there's probably been a little bit more of a trend. I don't want to say those guys weren't athletic. Those guys were fast, and it was maybe a little different style back in the day, but not much. It's always been a challenge. Very rarely does somebody have two guys in a 3-4 defense that are both the quality of the two guys they have here. Most teams have one, and the other guy's a guy that's up and coming. But this team has two, and it does make that part of it is a challenge.
As far as Spencer Burford, I realize I think he's the third youngest guy on the roster, and he's got tons of room to grow. But what does he need to do to sort of solidify a spot as a starter? What are you looking for from him?
Well, the consistency factor is the number one thing. An offensive line play, It's throughout. As the year goes on and the season gets longer and people see what you do and they see, as we talked about early in the year, you start developing a game, right? They see what your game is and they see what they can take advantage of. And so as that happens, you have to play to a level of consistency. And with him, it's some physical consistency, but so much of it comes back to there's just a lot of parts to the offense that, and he knows it. It's just in the spur of the moment in the game, sometimes it's not quite right, and then all of a sudden you're a little bit off with your technique, and then all of a sudden there's a play or two that just aren't what they need to be. So in the offensive line, sometimes consistency weighs out way over a big play, because a big play for a right guard, okay, he reaches the three technique and pancakes him versus he reaches the three technique and the guy just can't make the tackle. And both plays are running around the corner 8 yards away from him. One of them is a dominant play. The other one's just an okay play. Neither one of them is going to make that big a difference in the outcome of the game. If he falls on his face and misses him, it will. Whereas a running back, that same difference, if he makes an outstanding play in the open field and makes a free safety miss, and as opposed to just a guy that gets tackled by the free safety, that's a huge difference in the outcome of the game. So with offensive line, you're like, yeah, you love the splash plays, but you have to see the consistency. And that's what's hard as an offensive lineman. It is a grind. Day in and day out, week in and week out, especially when I say you start establishing maybe some things that they see about you and things that they'll try to take advantage of, and you then have to counter. So it's just a consistency thing. He's played very good football for us. He's gotten better every single week, and he continues to progress.
You play a team like the Ravens that put a lot of guys up near the line of scrimmage, and you don't know which guys are coming, which guys are dropping. What are the pros and cons of that from your standpoint? What are the downfalls and what are the potential rewards if you figure it out right and do everything you need to?
Well, the downside is that you for us, everything that we do is we coach. It's fundamentals. Okay, so you have a play, you have a protection called. Let's say we're talking about pass protection because they're on the line of scrimmage, and you have protection called. Okay, I got him, and then if they're stationary, if they're just stagnant, if they're just lined up, you're like, okay. Here's how we're going to pass set, and here's how the helps work, and here's who we're working to, and we're going to try and slide out and help our tackler, or help our double team our guard based on the people and where Aaron Donald is affects things and things like that. So you can kind of you can set your feet and say, okay, here I go. Now you have 8-9 guys in the line of scrimmage, and it appears to be one thing, and then all of a sudden it becomes something else, and you have to adjust on the fly, or you have to set the guy differently because there's two players standing one in either gap. You can't just set the one without being conscious of the other because you might get picked or some other things can happen. So there's some real challenges for us. The disadvantage, and I'm not a defensive coach, so I have seen sometimes, obviously they have all the guys in line of scrimmage. And I remember one time we were playing, this goes back to a story I mentioned, Jack Del Rio, and we were in Minnesota, we played New England a long time ago. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But on a 3rd and 12 in a game that we decided to bluff. He decided to bluff as the inside linebacker in the A gap. I don't know if it was Jack or somebody else. I'm not going to put on Jack, but and all of a sudden, and we dropped back, and they threw a ball right over his head, and he was probably 3 inches from tipping the ball. Probably would have been an interception at the end of the game. Ended up being a play that got him a big first down. They ended up beating us in a comeback victory. The point is, you're up in the line of scrimmage, and you have to go do your coverage. There's sometimes that little bit of gap where you can't quite get where you're supposed to be, and so there can be that disadvantage. I'm not speaking to them. I have no idea exactly what they tell their guys on every single when it comes to coverage, but that can be the disadvantage and where we can take advantage. I've seen it some on receiver screens. They play screens very, very well, but every now and then the receiver screen goes out the way, then they're kind of dropping guys the other direction. That's what I want to do the Ravens. They go out the other direction, and then you throw the screen out there, and all of a sudden you got these guys, there's nobody over there to help make the play. So there's a plus minus and all that stuff. But it makes it really, really hard fundamentally to zone in and lock in, and you have to have a lot of experience and start seeing, okay, how can I set and block these guys given the different parameters?
And I would assume they're really sound.
They're as well coached a defense as the record indicates. They've been there for a long time. They know what they're doing. They're veteran players. They're one of the better coached defenses that we faced all year.
You've been around so many great players. Where does Christian McCaffrey sort of rank among the best running backs you've been around, and why?
Well, the thing is that when I got in the NFL, what I noticed, okay, so I coached in college for 10 years. I grew up a Green Bay Packer fan. I mean, I grew up in the 60s with the Packers. I mean, I remember when Bart Starr, we relived the quarterback sneak 20 times in my family room the day it happened. I'm diving over pillows and who's going to be Starr and who's going to be Chuck Mercine with his hands up and Jerry Crane, all that stuff. And we did all that. It was cool. And so I grew up, and I remember my dad taking me down and watching these players walk by: Bart Starr, Ray Nitschke, Willie Davis, all of them. I'm like, holy cow, Jim Taylor, this is a starstruck kid, right? Like all of us. And then you fast forward, whatever, how many years, I'm 30 years old, I get my first job in the NFL, and I'm coaching for the Vikings. I remember my mom, the first question, she said, my mom, she goes, Chris, what are you going to do when you guys play the Packers? I said, Mom, the Vikings pay me. We're going to beat the shit out of them. That's what we're going to do. Sorry. That's what we're going to try and do anyway, But anyway, so get to the long story short is when I get to the NFL, I had in my mind Trent Williams, Jerry, all these guys, Bart Starr. You have these star-like images. Then you get on the field and you realize so much of the NFL, it's guys that aren't as big as you think they are. They're not as, what it is, it's the work ethic. It's the the talents there. You got to have, as Kyle says, you got to be able to get in the club, right? We're all sitting where we sit because maybe you guys could and you passed on it, but I couldn't get in the club. I couldn't get in the club of playing in the NFL, right? So I couldn't get in the club. But once you're in the club, it's the guys that work the hardest. Did Peyton Manning have the greatest arm of all time? Or did he just work at an extremely incredible level to understand defenses and do what he did with the offense that he did, how he manipulated protections and how he ran his offense, right? Every single player I went, as I started going through the league, it's the guys that work. Yes, every now and then there are the guys that have just incredible talent that don't do it. Now let's get back to Christian. Christian's that guy that does have the talent to get in the club. He's obviously fast, he's big enough, he's strong enough, but his attention to detail in every little thing that he does is, like I say, it's Manning-like. I mean, he's the only guy that I know that I can say I was with that I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen the detail he went in to went into everything that he did. And that's what I see with Christian. That's what sets him apart. And then the other thing is, which is all of them, there has to be a level, there's an incredible competitive drive and toughness. Like, that first guy's not getting him down. And there were some things said this week about some other running backs running against how hard they ran against this defense. Now, I can promise you Christian's steaming is somebody saying, oh, this guy ran really hard. I mean, they did a great job. That running back really got after he ran hard against the Ravens. And if you think that's hard, Christian's thinking to himself, I'll show you what hard is. And there's still that I'm going to show you mentality with this guy. So not only does he get great attention to detail, he freaking works his tail off and everything. Every single minute of every single day, he's fired up. I'll give you one more story about Christian. Okay, so yesterday, we're going to start practice. We're doing team takeoff. You guys are out there early. We do 2 simple little plays where we're kind of running screens on air or something like that. And Christian, we got about 40 seconds before the period starts. I go, Christian, I said, man, we're gonna get after these guys, man. We're gonna play fast. We're gonna play physical. I really feel good. I mean, and I don't know. Shoot, the Ravens are a great defense. We'll do the best we can. But I was being positive, I was pumping them up, And literally, it was like we were in the locker room getting ready to go play the game. He was so fired up. He's like, I agree, coach. And you could see his eyes get big, and he started to twitch a little bit. And he's like, I think we're gonna get these guys. I really think we can get these guys. I'm like, yeah, I think we can, Christian. I'm like, dude, I was just kind of giving you a little banter before we start the period, and he's ready to go run out the tunnel and play the game. So it's not fake. It's legit. It's just who he is. It oozes out of him, his preparation, all the things he does. So I could talk forever about Christian McCaffrey because he's like I said, he's almost one of a kind.
On the Manning cast Monday night?
I didn't get to watch it, no. I know the Manning cast. I didn't hear what he said, though.
He was able to identify basically a Philadelphia Eagles play before it happened just based on formation and, whatever.
Who was doing that, Peyton or Christian?
Christian.
Of course he did, yeah. Because those two guys right there, they're 2 peas in a pod right there. They'd be arguing in the backfield as to what they should be doing, I'm sure, if they both run the same team. But it's outstanding. It's really cool.
Before he came to the team?
No idea. I just knew he was a good player. Carolina, played hard. Stanford, I knew the guys that stat coached at Stanford, so I knew the people there. They spoke so highly of him. I actually, when I was at Stanford back in the day with Denny Green, Ed McCaffrey, his dad, played for us. So I knew Ed. I didn't know Christian. So.
You were on Denny Green's staff?
Yeah, I coached with Denny at Stanford, and then for 3 years I was there with Jack Elway for 1. Then they fired Jack and they kept me around because I was the lowest paid guy in the staff, so they kept me around. And then when Denny went to the Vikings, he said I was too young to go to the NFL, so I was out for a year and I went to the University of Minnesota conveniently, and luckily I kept in touch with Denny and the guys that went from the Stanford staff to the Vikings. The next year he hired me with the Vikings. So. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.